Hi, everybody. Thanks, Molly. And welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. It's all good to have you all back. It's been a beautiful day again here. I'm going away next week. I'm going to the Rocky Mountain Star Stare, and we're not looking at good weather. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. But we're here tonight, and I'm going to show you something that's just absolutely, let me get the chat out of the way first. That's kind of cool. I'm going to share my entire screen. Look at all the peoples we've got here. Look at all the peoples we've got here. Come on, screen, start sharing. We've got people from all over the world here. South Africa, a couple of German people, California, Australia. We got people, and we're going to be putting on a show for you that I think you guys are going to pretty much like. A while ago, I was reading on Cloudy Nights. I do that a lot, as you probably know. And I saw that some guys had gotten together and somehow coordinated taking a lot of pictures, getting a lot of time so that um, they could make a picture of M106. So that they're gonna tell us about how they made the mega project for M106. And as you know, this time every Sunday, I tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the future. Tonight, we've got Peter Maasewerd, and his team's coming up. And then Jock is going to be here next week. Jock's going to tell us about how to get the most out of our astro imaging time. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second here so that Jock could come in. Jock, are you out there? And
Yes,
can you tell
Alex.
us, what are you going to tell
Thank
us
you very
about next
much.
week? What are you going to tell us about?
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, so next week we're going to talk a bit about planning and preparation for your astro imaging sessions. We're going to discuss a few nice things around target selection. We're going to look a bit about gear and get you all organized and sorted out so that you can really make the most of your time under the stars. We know all that our dark time is very valuable to us, so we want to make the most of that. So hopefully there will be something for everybody there, some tips and tricks for newcomers and for more advanced imagers. So looking forward to sharing a few tips and tricks with everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure everybody's going to be here. It's really important to plan out what you're doing before you get about doing it, because if you don't, you can wind up wasting a lot of time and a lot of photons. The next week is America's birthday. And well, it isn't really. It's July 3rd, and you know how it is. We don't want you to have to split your attention. So on the on the honor of 4th of July, we're not going to have a show. And then we're going to hear from Guy, and he's going to be telling us about how to image for free using free software programs. Bob ZEQ is going to be coming here telling us about some resources for some of his favorite books, some of his favorite YouTube, some of his favorite ways to learn how to do astro imaging. Warren's coming back and talking about noise and wavelets. Um, and then we've got a couple of things. The Juno team's going to come in here, and they're going to tell us about some images from Juno. We got some other people coming in, but there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about right now. First is TAIC shots. TAIC shots this time around. That's where we take pictures that you guys send in and we put them together. Arno puts them together with video and music and stuff like that, makes a cool little presentation on it. You got to submit them by September 11th. And this time we're talking about going into the heart of the Milky Way. M17, M16, M8, M20, the little globular clusters down there, and Rovo and all those other cool pictures. Now, I know you've got them, and it is summertime, and it is the time to grab them. So please send them in. To submit them, you just click there to submit and send them in to us. The other thing we've got coming up is a TAIC workshop. And a workshop is where we send you a set of data. You can download the data, and then you send it back to us, and we get all the different impressions of how you guys like to process it. And then you come on a little bit, maybe, and tell us how you processed it. So if you go over to the TAIC workshop or TAIC shots, you'll find out more information at the astroimagingchannel.org. And when you get there, you can get all the data for Eric's California Nebula, and then you can submit your image here, and Rory will look through them and find out what you got and that kind of stuff. So that's cool. Now, I did mention that I'm going to the Rocky Mountain Star Stare next week. I'll be there Wednesday through Sunday. And I would like to do a show like you guys have seen it before, where we did, the imaging rigs of Nightfall or the imaging rigs of the Winter Star Party. We've done Texas and we've done Okie-Tex. So now it's our turn to do Rocky Mountain Star Stare. But I was thinking today on my walk around the block, I was thinking, there's no reason that Alex needs to be doing all these things. Every one of you, I hope, go to star parties now and then. So grab your cell phone, grab a microphone is cool. If you got like 2 microphones connected to your phone so that both you and the guy or the lady that you're interviewing can talk at the same time. You can do a imaging rigs of blankety blank wherever you are. And, tell us about it, and we'll maybe we can arrange a whole show, or maybe if I get several people, we'll arrange several little bits of shows. So I was just thinking that might be a cool idea. But I've got enough cool ideas to keep me going for a while. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it is time to bring on Andrew Lindenfeld, Peter Maasewerd, Philip Mair, and most importantly, who's actually doing the presentation, I understand, or at least leading the presentation, Francesco Meschia. Take it over. Okay, Francesco, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Here we are. All right, the mega project about M106. What is it about? It's a project that 4 friends undertook together at the beginning of this year, and we had lots of fun doing it. So these are the 4 people that are all present tonight that took part in this project. Peter Maasewerd, who is in Germany near the town of Münster. We have Andrew Lindenfeld, who is in the US on the East Coast near Springfield, Massachusetts. Philip Mair, also in Germany, in the southern part of Germany near Munich. And myself in the United States on the West Coast, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we started this, why we did that, why M106 in particular. We all had images of M106 in the past, so why revisit this particular Messier target? Well, the reason is boils down to Peter, essentially. Peter came across, I believe it was a NASA image of the day, by Genders and Gabani. They processed a mix of Hubble data and the data that they recorded that showed some very prominent anomalous arm-like structures in the galaxy. They only showed up in H-alpha. And they were departing from the core of M106, running through the disk for a while, and then apparently bending away from the galaxy disk. So that was enough to pique our curiosity, or at least to pique Pete's curiosity. And this is the picture that I'm talking about. There's the H-alpha data. You can see it very clearly. It looks like there's something coming out of the galaxy core and then suddenly bending almost 90 degrees. And it could be a perspective trick, of course, but it looks like it's projecting outside of the plane of the galaxy. So what is that, and can we see it more clearly? Well, Peter started collecting data the same year. In 2020, started collecting H-alpha, and in addition to LRGB data to capture those structures. And he started getting them, but then in 2021, he got a better camera, and the results from this camera were even better, of course, than he had acquired previously. But he really wanted more and more H-alpha data to fully develop the western part of the anomalous arms, this part here, which is faint. It's hard to render properly. So he and Andrew had this spontaneous idea of doing something together, doing a group exposure at the beginning of this year. And of course, M106 became a logical target. Pete and Andrew owned essentially the same hardware, the same telescope service 130 EDT triplet refractor, and the same ZWO ASI 27 mm camera with a set of filters. They invited Philip, who also has the same equipment, and so there were already 3 people joining. And Pete and I go way back. We know each other from when we were both imaging with DSLRs. I have a very similar scope. It's an Astrotech 130 EDT, so maybe it's a slightly different type of glass. It's imported by Astronomics, of course, but it's essentially the same telescope. And I also have a BSI camera, backside illuminated camera, although with a smaller sensor. Mine is the ZWO ASI 294 mm. But they were all kind enough to invite me to collaborate on this joint effort, despite a slight difference in the hardware that we had. And we started this project in January 2022. And our collaboration spans 9 time zones and fortunately and importantly, several climate regions. So we have a good chance that in every given 24-hour period, some of us has a decent sky, not too cloudy, and can image the data. Unfortunately, we also span quite a few Bortle zones. Now, Pete and Philip are lucky enough to live in Bortle 4 to 4.5, but Andrew and myself are hopelessly under Bortle 7 skies. And I think this is very interesting because Pete and Philip are relatively close to major urban areas. And Germany must be doing something right if 30 miles from a city of 350,000 people, Pete can already be in Bortle 4. So it's because of that, of course, we had to decide how to divide the task. So those were it was necessary to lay some ground rules with some key decisions before we even get started. So how do we frame the target? We of course want to maximize the overlap among the field of use of the 4 telescopes. We wanted to position interesting areas so that they are covered by ideally the field of view of all cameras. And also, how do we subdivide the work packages? People who are under Bortle 7 probably are doing best in narrowband, so in H alpha, than people who are in under good Bortle conditions can collect LRGB data much more effectively than we can. And once we have collected the data, how do we share that? Do we share the raw data? Do we share calibrated subs? Do we share aligned subs? How do we do that? What technical means? Also, what can we do with the data that we collect? What are the usage conditions, the rules that we all decided to abide to make use of the data pool? And also, how do we go public when we have finally completed our images? How do we make it available to forums, to social media? Those are all things that we had to decide. On the other hand, we decided not to put constraints on the software that each of us used for both acquisition and processing. And the rationale for that is that we believe that in order to be effective, most effective, we should put imagers' comfort first. So for instance, Peter, Andrew, and myself use Nina for acquisition, but Philip uses K-stars, and that is not a problem at all. And it would be wrong to force either of the 2 factions to the other software, of course. Processing, same thing. I process in PixInsight just like Andrew does and Philip does, but Pete is very comfortable using a blended workflow using APP, so AstroPixel Processor, and Adobe Photoshop. It's very effective at Photoshop. I hope he's going to talk about that. And that is also not a problem. We actually figure out how to translate our techniques across different applications, and it was very effective because it gave us a better understanding of what we are doing and why. Now, the elephant in the room is how do we share this amount of data? We are talking about a terabyte scale pool of data. Each shot that you take on these cameras takes about 100 megabytes. And, we actually tried to keep exposures short on the short side to collect as wide a dynamic range as possible. We didn't want to saturate the stars. We didn't want to saturate the core of the galaxy. But of course, when you limit the exposure times, you end up with more files. We are not there yet at the stage of where we can dynamically and using GPUs and AI assemble the images as we go, as we were saying last week. So data quickly rack up. A long night, a winter's night of good weather for all fours can produce like 40 hours of data. And this translates into about 450 subs. And so we're talking about 35 gigabytes of data in one night. In the end, we collected 253 hours of data, and this was spread across about 4,300 subs. So 400 gigabytes of data, more than 400 gigabytes of data, just for the raw files. Certainly, we cannot scale up to that kind of storage space just via email. We cannot possibly think of sending each other pictures and the subs via email. But what really gave us the solution was Philip's sharing his NAS, his network attached server, network attached storage with all of us by setting up a private cloud exposed to the internet that we all could see and that we all had permissions to write to and pull data from. And this really was the game changer. That's what really gave us the ability to quickly store a huge amount of information and make it available to other people, and the other people could download them and check them and verify what other people were doing and decide in what direction to evolve our acquisition. Also, when you're talking about 4,300 subs that each image has contributed to this pool, and it's not exactly a simple thing to integrate 4,300 subs. Just the scratch space needed, if you're thinking of, I take the image, I calibrate it, and I obtain a calibrated version, and then I register, and then maybe I'll integrate. You need well over 1 terabyte of data just for throwaway space. Also needs a lot of memory and lots of computing power. And again, we were fortunate enough that one of us stepped up to the plate, and in this case it was Pete, and he kindly volunteered to register and integrate each of the filter stacks. So the images had already been calibrated by the individual imager before uploading them to the cloud. Pete downloaded everything, and he set up his integration process using a suitably powerful machine, an 8-core machine, and still it took 36 hours of continuous processing to get to the final stacks. Then he uploaded the final stacks to the cloud, and from there we downloaded everything, and that was the point where we were ready to start our processing journey. But before that, we needed to also decide how to coordinate our efforts. It's very interesting. We didn't want to have 4 people, each of them working in isolation. We really wanted to be able to compare our preliminary results, share tips and tricks, share the techniques that we were using so that all of us could learn. Again, email does not really scale for that. And even the direct messages on a forum would not be sufficient to coordinate what we needed, the planning, the imaging, and the processing efforts. So given that we were all familiar with the Discord, it's used by many applications, among which Nina, so all of the Nina users, the 3 Nina users in the pool were familiar with that, and we set up a Discord server of our own. In this way, we created one channel for the acquisition, one channel for processing, one for final touches, and one just to chat about what's next for us, what are you going to do this weekend, and so on and so forth. So we could even use Discord to communicate directly with each other using direct messages. And we were verbose. We exchanged 55,000 words in the project, in the main project channel, essentially the one where we were coordinating acquisition and then processing. And then we had over 8,000 words that were exchanged in the channel dedicated to final touches, deciding, oh, are you ready with your processing? No, I'm going to need 1 or 2 more days, and then I'm ready to publish. How do we publish? Who's going to create the post on Cloudy Nights? What order should we follow to publish on Astrobeam, and so on. But while we were doing that, and thanks to the fact that we were constantly discussing what our acquisitions plan were, we came across a question: what data should we collect? Oh, obviously, LRGB and H-alpha are a no-brainer. We needed to collect those. But how about oxygen 3? So the conventional wisdom is that galaxies are not very interesting in oxygen 3. There's not much signal there. However, we wanted to experiment anyway. I believe the first one of us that collected O3 frames was Philip at the end of January. And we found, to our surprise, some good data. So this is an individual sub that we captured. If I zoom in, we see that the jets that were becoming very obvious in H-alpha were also present, but much fainter in oxygen 3. So these are the two jets, and they are very, very faint. They don't project much above the noise floor. But this is one sub, and as we collected more, we discovered that these jets were actually present and visible in O3. So we decided to collect O3 data en masse, just like we did for H-alpha. And so we found that there are anomalous arms. There are details in the anomalous arms that are worth collecting in O3. We started to realize that there are subtle but clear differences between how the arms appear in H-alpha and in oxygen 3. And I have here a video that shows you the difference. Now, there are 2 main arms, this one and this one, that are fairly bright both in H-alpha and in oxygen 3. But there are 2 sub-arms, I call them, but I don't even know what is their physical nature. One is here, next to the main arm, and one is between the 2 main arms, that they are almost equally bright in O3 and H-alpha, at least in this stretch factor. And so this is interesting. This means that not everything is H-alpha red. There's more color in these anomalous arms than you can find in other pictures. And this is what really inspired us to continue acquiring O3 data, and inspired us in the processing on how to render this in the best possible way, in a way that renders both the brightness difference and the color difference. And that became really the challenge. It was the main challenge, at least for me, in the subsequent processing of the data. And so what about processing? At the beginning, when we started processing, we discarded the bad subs, of course, and we ended up with this final tally. We had slightly over 17 hours of luminance. We had about 8 hours in each of R, G, and B, 75 hours in oxygen 3, and almost 109 hours of H-alpha. And I would say the LRGB numbers are nothing impressive. Everybody can probably has an image with this kind of LRGB tally. But what we feel are the interesting part of our project was the narrowband data and how they added to the project. So in the end, this makes for 225 hours of total integration, or if you prefer it in seconds, it's more impressive, 800,000 seconds, more than 800,000 seconds. In general, they are it's good quality data. The LRGB is mostly from Bortle 4, so it has good signal-to-noise ratio. And narrowband is a combination of Bortle 4 and Bortle 7. And by narrowband, some of us use the astronomic 6 nanometer filters. I was using the Bader 4 nanometer filters, and Andrew has Chroma 3 nanometer filters. So we had a varying bandwidth from 6 to 3 nanometers. Of course, we all heard that, oh, when you have very good data, its processing is a breeze. Well, maybe it's true in general, but it was not for us. It was certainly an effort to do this. And what I think was the reason was that having good data makes you want more. You want to extract as much detail as possible. You want to have the most seamless blend of narrowband data into broadband data. And this goes by trial and error, at least for me. You have to try, and you show it to other people, you show it on Discord, you get their feedback, they show you the same result that the result that they obtain with the same technique, and you learn by doing that about something new about your technique, something that you hadn't experimented yet. And this accelerated the pace. Still, it took a long time to achieve an image that we were all happy with. So we constantly traded these results, feedback, tricks, and techniques, and yet it took us about 1 month for each of us to be happy with their own results. And it was time well spent, because our idea, part of our bylaws, the rules at the beginning of the project was that each of us would process a final image to his own taste. We would not try to create a synthesis of our own individual aesthetical taste, but each of us would have an image, each of us would publish it. The data is shared, the result is individual, so if you want. So this was, to me, the most interesting part of the process, because something unexpected for me, at least, happened. That although we discussed a set of tools and technique, a wealth of techniques, and we applied them all with some different recipe, but we all applied the same techniques, we didn't get two images that were identical to one another. No two images were interpreted by us in the same way. And this makes the project even more valuable in my mind, because not only you share the data, you share knowledge, and you compare what you see, what your eyes see, your aesthetical taste with other people. And in the end, there's no right interpretation. Everybody's happy with their own. A few notes about processing, given that we talked about this. As I mentioned, we use the different applications, but we were, all of us were proficient enough with their application of choice that we were able to translate the same ideas into an implementation of those techniques into the particular application. And one example that I'm giving, and I believe that Pete also is going to talk about this, is to use what's called the Continuum subtraction for narrowband data. So the idea is that you have, when you acquire a narrowband image, especially if the filter is not super narrow, you're not just capturing the emission in one spectral line, but you're also collecting all of the broadband information that happens to fit in the bandwidth of the narrowband filter. So when you collect H alpha, you also collect a part of the continuum red signal. And when you add it back, if you just add it back after processing, you're going to make everything more red than you began with. But if you subtract mathematically a portion of the broadband data from the narrowband data, you can, in the end, obtain an information which is a closer representation of just the emission line information. And when you blend it back into the broadband channel, you're only enhancing the parts that that have emission line emission. Sorry. And I have an example here. So this is an H-alpha integration that we actually had in our workflow. There's good signal. You can see the H2 regions in the arms, the inner arm and the outer arm, and you can see the jets. But there's lots of continuum. All of this part near the core, the jets are almost overwhelmed by the continuum information. So what do? You do a little bit of pixel math, and you have the H-alpha information, but you also have a red color integration, a red filter integration. So you subtract from the H-alpha information a portion, that K factor, a portion of the red information. And in this case, to get the red information and not without worrying about the fact that the median value may not be the same, I subtract from the starless R integration, I subtract its average value. So I consider that the average value is the background sky, and I subtract it. When you do that, after tweaking after a few attempts with trial and error to find the right value of K, you get something like this. You see the core is gone almost. What you get is a very clear representation of the portions that only emit H-alpha light. You have the jet, you have the H2 regions, and you get some interesting structures like this arc here that were almost invisible in the region. You have a very clear bifurcation of the arm of the jet here, which is basically not visible or very faintly visible in the H-alpha image before continuum subtraction. So this was a very powerful technique, very interesting, and this is the application that I showed you is obviously in PixInsight, but Pete was able to do the same in Photoshop without a problem. And this brings me to finally showing some images, not just some preliminary work that I've done so far. So I listed here the 4 images that we have in what I call the order of increasing astrobeam success. So the first one would be my own image that didn't get any particular accolades on astrobeam. Then we have
Francesco. Before we start showing your image, can I ask you a question here?
Please.
I was curious about the continuum subtraction for oxygen 3.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of that? What did that look like?
We did it too. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna have to fire up my PixInsight to show you something. But it's probably best if I ask for help from my friends. Andrew or Philip, or Pete, do you happen to have any O3 continuum subtraction preliminary image that you can show?
Not at present. I have a combination of HA and O3 in the color version.
Yeah.
Well, I can look for that. But
Francesco,
maybe in a minute.
Francesco and Peter, I know that you guys have prepared a bunch of stuff already.
Right.
Maybe we should go through. Well, we'll continue to answer some questions, but if it's going to take a long answer, maybe we should put that off towards the end of the program and go back to, there are some other questions that were over there. And meanwhile, maybe somebody can figure out how to stage the O3 subtraction.
Yes.
The other question that I think goes along with that, there are plenty of examples of these red sprites coming out of galaxies.
Yeah.
I can't think of any blue sprites coming out of galaxies.
Exactly. That's something that puzzled us for a while. Do you
have an explanation of what that could be?
I personally do not. I also searched for what's the physical nature of these arms. And there are papers about M106, scientific papers, I mean. And one that I found from 1996 even suggests that these are not structures that project out of the galaxy plane. But then another paper from 2001 suggests the opposite. They do project out of the galaxy plane, although they are not 90 degrees as the perspective would lead us to believe. It's like 20 degrees. So it's quite interesting. And in any case, what appears to be the nature of these arms seems to be a shock wave of the interaction between the relativistic jets emitted by a black hole in the core of the galaxy and the interstellar medium.
Interesting.
Okay.
A couple other questions. Alex, I think I have them here. How best did you integrate, the different scopes with some of the different sensors in order to kind of balance them in integration? It's easy to do when you have just one setup, and now you have multiple setups, multiple scopes, and multiple cameras.
Right. So we use the weighting algorithm in the integration, and that was essentially based on the signal to noise ratio of each image, of each sub. So the images with the subs with the higher signal to noise ratio were weighted more than images with poor SNR, of course.
So it was mainly SNR. You didn't use any of these weighting calculations from PixInsight to take in multiple factors.
This was purely SNR.
SNR.
Yeah.
SNR, and this was made in AstroPixel processor.
In APP.
And this has a quality measure, and this is calculated by some formula where the FWHM and SNR and other factors go into a weighing process.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, Francesco and Peter, you're talking about how you equalize the exposure values, and so that you had essentially the same exposure values going on in the different scopes. Guy has asked, you're using different scopes, different cameras.
Yep.
I think you also need to mention something about registration.
Of course.
Yeah. So, because this is one of the most frequently asked questions on Cloudy Nights Beginner's Corners. How do you use different scopes, and how do you different cameras and get the same picture?
Yeah.
And it's really a simple answer. So go for it.
The answer is the interpolation. Essentially, the applications that do this integration. Peter used APP, but PixInsight works in exactly the same way. When they register images, they calculate not just a shifting and a rotation, but also a scaling factor. And so when you have to scale up an image because the pixels they don't subtend the same angle in the sky, there's a need to do interpolation. And the PixInsight, I believe, uses by default the Lanczos interpolation algorithm. I'm not sure what APP does, and maybe Pete, would you know?
Yes, by standard it is also Lanczos 3.
Yep.
For the user, it is very, very easy. You just put all the files in and press a button, and the rest is done by the software. I think in PixInsight maybe similar, but in APP, I can talk for APP. This is not any problem. This is really the most simple part of all. You can mix different sources. You can mix color and mono images. You can mix different sensors, different focal length, and within a certain range of parameters, this is all handled by the software automatically.
So before you get onto your images, so when you added back the blue of the O3 and the red of the hydrogen alpha, was this a separate process, or did you add them back to those appropriate channels?
I added them back into this is my technique. I added the H alpha, the continuous subtracted H alpha to red, and to a smaller extent in blue. It's debatable, but there's a school of thought that says where's H alpha, there's also H beta. And so you look up the relative intensities of the two spectral lines, and you adjust the factor corresponding. For oxygen 3, it's also interesting because the filters that we used overlap. The blue and green filter overlap in the 500.7 nanometer region. So the O3 should be added to both blue and green. That's what I did for.
Yes, that's exactly.
And another point is that you, if you want, it depends on the personal technique, can also use these, I call them residuals of the subtraction in the luminance channel. I'll show that later. You can also use it there to enhance structural detail, not only color detail but also structure.
Yeah. For instance, the technique I used to achieve this, after I combined an RGB image with the addition of H alpha and an oxygen 3 data, I extracted a luminance channel out of it, and I blended this with the proper luminance data that we had acquired with a luminance filter. And this, if you get the proportions right, and the way I got them right was by comparing by weighing them based on the signal to noise of each of the two, you get more detail.
So let's see your images. We're waiting.
Thank you. Right there. So the order, I said mine will be first, then Philip, who got a top pick candidate, Andrew, whose image was a top pick, and Pete, whose image was an image of the day on Astrobeam on April the 23rd. So let's start. This is mine. The overall idea that I tried to render in this image was to try to balance the colors and make sure that the contribution from H alpha and oxygen would be visible, but not too much in your face. Essentially, it's just too easy to create a glowing neon H2 regions in the arms. So I got obviously the arms, the anomalous arms. I have them here. If I zoom in, you're going to see that I have the two main arms, and then I have very subtle two bluish teal puffs from the O3 jets. And these are present both in O3 and in H alpha. It is not exclusively blue; it's blended. So there's this was the color that came out of the mathematical combination. Didn't look too bad to me, and I balanced the rest so that this would not be drowned in the galaxy core. But there was also another goal that I had in my processing, and it's probably best exemplified in this image. Now, I annotated this image using all of the galaxies in this field from the Hyperleda catalog. So there are 299 galaxies in the end. And what I found interesting, you can really get lost zooming into this image and see how much is there. And by the way, in the image, you can see galaxies that Hyperleda does not have in the catalog. Doesn't mean that we discovered them, of course. It just means that that catalog stopped before getting there. And I estimate that we captured galaxies up to an integrated magnitude of 24. And this is an interesting example. This is a corner. It's an enlargement of the top corner of next to the top corner of M106. This is a galaxy cluster. It's a cluster of galaxies that lies 3 billion light years away from us. And the way I found it was by going from this image. I used an interesting, sorry, not this. I used the Simbad. And in Simbad, you can zoom in and out as you look. And I found one of the galaxies that I had imaged. And then if you click over query in a CDS portal, you find information about this object. And not only you find information, you also find the redshift and the name of the cluster that it belongs to. And so from the redshift, you can calculate the distance, and it comes out between 2.9 and 3.1 billion light years, depending on the metric model that you consider trustworthy. And this to me was the rewarding part, that our image was deep enough that you could see galaxies this far. And this paid me back over a month of excruciating processing for this image. Now, this is it for this is what I wanted to show you from my image. I am now going to pass the baton to Philip. So I am going to stop my sharing, and Philip, take it away when you want. Stop presenting.
Okay, I will present now. So, you see my screen? Right. So I also tried to keep the image as original as possible in the LRGB area. So if you compare it with the plain RGB, I tried to add the H-alpha and O3 as decent as possible for me without losing the original colors. And I also concentrated on the little smart galaxies, and here's the cluster that Francesco mentioned before. And yeah, that was the goal, to add the H-alpha and the O3 data without losing too much color information of the original RGB image. That was really tough for me. Yeah, so that was my best result that I have published. You can also see the blending of the O3 data, and that for me looking separated arm only really present in the O3 data here. But I guess Pete is showing that later too. So I have continuum subtraction of O3 here, so I can show it now or later. So,
well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I have found it. So I have here the original O3 data with the starless version, and that was my continuous subtraction that I did. Was a really try and error journey to get that continuum in the core away if you add it to the LRGB image without getting a bluish color into the whole image. So that was my goal. I also did a bit optimization with the HDR multiscale transform process to get the last continuum in the center, to put it away, to eliminate it. Yeah. Yes. So I also concentrated on it is I don't remember, NGC galaxies here, so that was really tough. And one fact we all have it in our image, but no one can explain what it is that I don't know how to call it in English, that it looks like a line through the star. We discussed it, but we never found out what it is, and we may ended up that it's an artifact, but we don't really know it.
Yeah, the ominous red streak.
Yeah. Okay, so I will finish my presentation and give over to Andrew.
All right, thanks, Philip. Let me just share my screen. All right, can you see the screen? All right, perfect. So for me, this project was a lot about learning basically everything new because I'm actually pretty new at astrophotography. I only started back in May of 2020. So I basically had to learn how to properly process an LRGB image, first of all, before even thinking about the ridiculous amount of narrowband data. Things like making an RGB image first, and then blurring it, combining it with L, making the luminance look nice, noise reduction, deconvolution, and then, like was already said, the continuum subtraction. That was tough to learn, to say the least. And it was only because I was able to communicate with the group so fluently. And by the way, I'm the only one that speaks English as a native language. So for these guys to have English as a second language, it was a breeze communicating. So I'm still impressed with that. Another thing too was the best part of the project for me, it wasn't just working with 3 other great imagers who I look up to, but making friends with really good people. So that's pretty much all I had to say. There wasn't much more to it than that. It was just a lot of trial and error and luck. So with that, I'll hand the baton off to Pete, who is going to tell us a little bit about Photoshop and how he used that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, fine, thank you. So me and M106, yeah, as already told, this is a longer story. I love her as a galaxy, and this 2022 run was the 3rd one with me and M106. It's a wonderful, mighty galaxy itself, but it also has an interesting neighborhood, as we already saw here, NGC 4217, and but from the beginning, I was attracted by the anomalous 08, difficult for me, arms of this galaxy with the jets, and especially I fell in love later with these little HA clouds here that cost me hours of processing to have them in the fine imaging. And all this needs special treatment to be visible later in the composite. A few minutes ago, I think Alex asked for the continuum subtraction with the 03, and here you see a combination of the 2 continuum subtractions I made for H alpha and A3, and that what comes into the final image from the 03 is some tint, some tone around the core, and here this decent blue jet, and here is the basis. That's all that ends up in the final image from the 03. Yeah, continuum subtraction. I'd like to try to explain at least the principles. I'm not a PixInsight man. I do my basic things in APP, which for me is exquisite in processing. The rest of the work is done in Photoshop, which I love for its incredible flexibility, and it's what you see is what you get concept, which gives me something like a 3D feeling when I work with it. It feels like a glove, and I can do a lot of trial and error things just without calculating and thinking, just doing. So what is the principle? So first we have the HA here. This is, like Francesco said, it has a lot of broadband data, especially around the core that has slipped through the narrowband filter. And also we have the red here. that contains the HA data. I don't know if I can show that here, that at least a little bit. No, and this, I'll show it later. You can find a hint of the arms in the red channel, but not much more. So we have to get that broadband part sorted out, and we do that by subtracting the red from the HA and get this result. That doesn't look very spectacular, but if you combine it later with in Photoshop, I can only talk for Photoshop, with elaborate blend modes and other techniques, you can get a lot out of it. So this is what I consider to be the HA part of the HA signal here. Then this residual is combined with a red channel, and finally in a small portion with the blue channel, because where H alpha there's also H beta, and that is blue. And finally, you get an enhanced red channel. That was the goal. Well, continuum subtraction in Photoshop, there are multiple applications for continuum subtraction. Let me tell it CS because it's easier for me, the next sentences. So you can, with CS, you can enhance and merge narrowband channels. You can also enhance detail in structures in luminance, in the luminance channel. And it helps you to bring channel-specific detail from one channel to the other in luminance composites. For example, when you tinker a luminance channel from O3, H alpha, and all the luminance channels, it's very helpful if you can enhance special parts of interest with this method. And in Photoshop, it is very easy to apply CS iteratively. You don't need to do it just once with one channel. You can do it several times with several ways if you want. The mode of operation can be controlled by using various blend modes, various adjustment layers. You can use, instead of the K value in PixInsight, you can use the opacity values with the opacity rulers in Photoshop. And you can use, that's very special, the blend if function, so you can apply the subtraction residual only to a special luminance range, for example. And which is a good trick, use the luminosity, use the CS in luminosity or saturation masks. And with the live feeling, what you see is what you get thing, it gives you a lot of room for trial and error and creative testing, which in this case, with this huge amount of data, was very, very helpful. So I'll try to switch to Photoshop now to show some method. You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. It was so silent.
We warned you about the silence when you asked the question.
Okay. So in the beginning, we have here this red starless image, which I worked with in this case. And here you see very, very subtle hints of the H alpha. You see it in the northwestern part. You don't really see it. It is there, but you can't see it. And additionally, I here would like to show the original H alpha, like it came out of the integration box with just a little stretching. And this was optimized a bit to use it for the subtraction, and then it looks like this. And so you have all what you want to show later, you have inside this HA and inside this red layers. In the next process, step. You have the H alpha and put the red on top. It's very easy. Switch to subtract and you have the first result. This is channel subtraction in Photoshop. Basically quite easy. What is important for me, for my work in Photoshop, is that I can experiment with the results. For example, manipulate the H alpha by using adjustments layers. You can change the result of the subtraction by going into the image, for example, to a part of interest and raise or lower its contribution to the construction. Or, for example, use tones and change the contrast. And so you are quite free in Photoshop by trial and error to set the parameters for the for the subtraction method. And then you can boost, for example, with additional adjustment layers. You can boost the result to your feeling, how you think you want to work on with it. That's the main step of the subtraction that, as I said, mainly consists of just a layer. Oops. Just a layer of H alpha, the layer of red in subtraction. Blend mode here. Subtrahieren is subtraction. In the next step, you take the original red channel, and this time you put on top I'll explain in a minute why it is black here. In the next step, you put on top the subtraction residual and switch to a blend mode that adds the one into the other. For example, screen, or this would be with the screen blend mode. And this is, I don't know how it is in the English version. In German, it is add, linear, abwedeln. And so you have the combination. Very smooth. And if you have this combination, you have multiple ways to decide how much of the signal gets into the, it's a bit slow here, gets into the final result. You can blend it out here. This would be the pixel math thing in PixInsight, I think. Here you have this ruler, or you can apply the amount of the residual to come in, which I like very much with the blend if mode, blend if function. So you can decide to which range of luminosity you want to have it added or not. I hope it is visible what I do here. And you have always the opportunity to go into the image portions and go to specific areas or luminance ranges and work with contrast and brightness and so on to have the result like you want to have it. And in the end, you get this enhanced layer with all the information here coming from the RGB, in this case from the red, and the details and special things coming from the H alpha. And then you add the stars and you're done. So I wanted to show once more how it looks like if you combine the residuals of the O3 subtraction and the HH alpha subtraction. And in the final image, it looks like this. What else do I have here? Ah, yeah, this is the H alpha residual, and this is the O3. You ask for that. You see clear differences in the subtraction results. Here, this small arm that appears bluish later in the total composite is very weak in my case here in the HA, but like I manipulated it, quite present in the O3. Yeah, that was from my side what I can show you.
Thank you, Pete. I'm gonna take the presentation again for the final remarks. So, the anomalous arms. This was the main goal that we had. We really wanted to image. We want to find out what was possible to extract from the background. So, did we get them? Well, let's compare our image with the data from the X-ray observatory Chandra. And this is a nice video that Philip prepared. This is our image. This is Chandra. And again, our image. And again, Chandra. I would say that our arms are basically in the same position where the X-ray signal from Chandra is. So looks like we got them. Also interesting are these oxygen 3 arms, the way that they look in O3. We couldn't find, unfortunately, much data for comparison. We didn't find any image that has both H alpha and O3 with the Continuum image as well. But we are confident that what we captured is real because the components of the structures are definitely there in O3. In Pete probably has the most effective rendering of them, but they are present in all of our images and they are present in the original data. It's I'm playing again this animation that really shows that the information is there both in O3 and both in H alpha, and Pete showed it as well. The relative strength of the sub-arms in O3 and in H alpha is different. So we believe those are physical differences. They correspond to actual objects in the sky, in the galaxy. So the collaboration worked. And in general, I think that this kind of collaboration has lots of potential. It gives you has the potential of giving you a very deep look because the data are recapped very quickly when you have multiple scopes. And this is basically an answer to a question that was asked earlier. Data from similar setups are very easy to integrate. The image scale is not a problem at all. Where I can envision problems, maybe if one of us had an RC scope, a Ritchie Chrétien, and the rest had the refractors, we would be maybe in a little bit of more a problem with having star spikes in some images and no spikes in other images. But so far, the worst that we had was that strange red cut in one of the stars that Philip was talking about. Not really hard to process. Thanks to this experience, I believe we have a working model for future collaborations that we are going to undertake. We learned that having multiple imagers, experimenting as we go and sharing the challenges that they faced and the solution that they provided really keeps the motivation up. I won't lie, going through one entire month of processing when somebody has always found some better way to render that costed you 5 hours last night, it requires motivation. You really need to be committed to having a final result. Otherwise, it's just too long to maintain a good motivation alone. Doing it in a collaboration gives you this motivation. And I consider it a huge byproduct of this collaboration. In addition to the 4 images, the wealth of shared knowledge and techniques that we all learned, and we all shared. It was fantastic to see that nobody had their secret way of doing things that we didn't want to share. Everything here was common across the 4 images. And of course, the question that you probably already have is, would we do it again? Or will we do it again? I would say definitely will. We'll certainly do this again. We haven't sorted out the next target yet, so I cannot tell you, oh yeah, we're gonna spend 300 hours on this target here, because we haven't decided. Will likely be some narrowband target to essentially give Andrew and me a fighting chance against our light pollution. We certainly want something that will benefit from the deep look that I was referring to. It doesn't make sense to collect 300 hours on a target that has lots of good signal to noise ratio, even at shorter integration time. And so this is it for our mega collaboration project. I would like to thank all of you, and thank Andrew, Pete, and Philip for welcoming me in this project and keeping up the momentum and the motivation throughout all of this. Thanks again, and these are the links to the 4 astrobeam images in case any of you is interested in taking a second look and zooming in and doing some pixel peeping. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all you guys. Really inspiring the way you put together that work, and you get so much done. You know, we all strive to get, in my case, 12, 20 hours on the same target, and to pick up 225 hours. That's like really increases your reach, your ability to get good signal out of that noise. So congratulations. And I love the way that you guys are working with each other, feeding off each other with all the techniques, even across software packages. You know, some were Photoshop, some were PixInsighting, and things like that. We did have a question. All of the raw files, were they all processed in PixInsight, or did you each process your own and whatever it was, and then sent your raw files in?
We all processed our own subs.
Okay.
Sorry, calibrated our own subs.
And you didn't all use PixInsight to do that. One of you used APP, another. Okay.
The integration, on the other hand, was done with APP.
Okay.
So how do you determine when is enough data enough? No, it's a serious question.
Never. It is a good
The calendar. I think it was the calendar who told us to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just kind of decided we were tired and wanted to get into processing.
So your wives told you to stop, huh?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. As I remember, the moon stopped the session.
Yes.
How long from the time you first said, okay, we're going to go do M106, start collecting, till the time you got to, okay, that's enough? How many days, months was it?
I think it was at least 2 full moon cycles
Yes.
that we did it.
Did you happen to look at SNR as you were collecting data for a stacked image? And then did you see a point of diminishing returns that I find that it tends to level off after a while? And
Tim, you stole my question right out of my mouth.
Actually,
you know that too, don't you? Yes, I think we both have the same question. I mean, when you if you start plotting SNR, like say luminosity, it doesn't do any good once you get towards that plateau.
I haven't seen it plotted but I know that one big thing for us was we noticed for the hydrogen alpha, especially, that when we were doing 300-second exposures, it wasn't enough to raise the faint arms over the noise floor. So once we doubled it to 10 minutes. I think Francesco was doing that from the beginning, and we noticed the arms are showing up much more rapidly with 10-minute exposures versus, the 5-minute.
And I know you said this, but are you all using CMOS or some using CCD?
CMOS. But to your question, I'd like to show an image to show the bandwidth of the HA data. I think it is. I just quickly searched for something. Give me a second, please.
The SNR question isn't as pertinent, say, as luminosity. I don't think you ever have too much HA data.
Yeah, I mean, there's never a plateau. It's always growing, but it grows slower and slower.
Slower and slower, right? That's what I find.
So, you see, this is the quality, let's say, of all our HA images. The green line, the best image has 1.0, and this is the worst. And we took about 900 for the HA integration, 909, I think. So we had a big variation in quality in the final integration I distributed to my friends here.
Yeah. And the explanation that I give to that is that this was January and February, so the weather was not the best for all of us. California is a nice place to be for astronomy, but we had to collect from other places as well. And there was also one of the problems that I personally have is that when I had to image this target late in the night because I had to wait until it rises above my backyard trees. And when that happens in January is typically the wettest part of the night, so dew starts to become a problem.
Mm. It would be interesting to do this kind of project with that target on a bigger scope and a smaller field of view.
Yes.
Yeah. Pete just found that somebody shared on a German forum an image of M106 that was taken with a 1 meter telescope from Austria. And the resolution is pretty impressive. The depth is not hugely different because this imager stopped at 26 hours. So there is still a 10x factor between the total integration times. But yeah, the resolution-wise, the 1 meter really shows. Although seeing limits, of course.
Yes.
The next live will do that.
Can I interrupt you for a minute here? I'm going to share my screen. I want to take you over to Cloudy Nights. If you Google Cloudy Nights M106 MegaProject collaboration, this is from April 10th of this last year. And this is how I found out about the project. And for those of you out there may want to look it up, and you can find that there are a number of comments and all sorts of other information over there for you.
I put the link to the Cloudy Nights post in the,
okay.
It's currently in the video description for everyone to go click on.
Thank you.
So be sure to go on over there and check that out for these guys, because they did a lot of work and it deserves to be recognized.
Well, thank you very much. There is one thing I would like to add. One of the gremlins I battled throughout this project, and I probably would have contributed double the hours had I known this simple thing. My mount that I have is a CEM 70, and I had it for about a year, a little over a year when I started the project. Apparently, and this is something in a lot of mounts, they don't tell you that they need regular re-greasing. I had huge spikes randomly, and I thought it was software. I was pulling my hair out trying to figure out the problem. and it just simply needed fresh grease. I pulled it apart not even a month ago and re-greased it because I actually found it on the Paramount page because I've been dreaming of upgrading my mount, and it helped me out because I re-greased my RA and deck worm and the main gears, and it runs smooth as a clock now. So for anybody that is having random spikes, check out how long it's been since you've re-greased your mount.
Yeah, I think the Paramount manual, if I recall, recommends every 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how long, but I know my friend who actually just did a M33 collaboration with, it's small, only 30 hours, but he hasn't re-greased his mount in over 10 years, and he just did it because he found out what I was doing and was like, oh my God, I should look into that. And he said the inside of his mount looked like a war zone. And so yeah, maintenance is a big thing with your mount.
Okay, folks. I want to thank you all for being here. Look forward to hearing from Jock next week. It's been a great show. And what else can I say? Is everybody ready to go?
Yep.
Then let's do our waving. And Molly, I think you're in charge. Who's in charge tonight?
I
Molly?
am. Yep.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take us out. Good night,
Hope you
everybody.
all had a good Father's Day. Those of us that are fathers.
Yeah.
Yes, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.